Welcome back, Brother Abdulmaalik. In the last episode, we were talking about how your journey started, and it hasn't been an easy one. It's been tough, and probably you knew this afterwards, that this is what Allah tells us in Al Quran, that in Surah Al-Ankabut, that do people think that if they say we believe that they will be left without being tested, they will have to be tested. So from what you told me, apparently you were truly tested. Now, I know that there are members of the Hindu community who convert to Islam, but how many are there? Is there a community now? Do you know others as well? Do you meet with each other? Do you form your own community?
Believe it or not, there are Hindus who convert to Islam. However, they don't reveal themselves openly. Apart from myself and one other brother who I know, we're perhaps the only two, maybe in the UK, who are open about our former faiths and about our journey to Islam, and we share our experiences. I do have a relative who has converted to Islam. And what happened was I was on a fundraising appeal for Convert Centre, and one of the sisters who was there, who I know as well, she actually showed me a WhatsApp message saying that my cousin had converted. I'm like thinking, well, who is she? I don't know. Mentioned their name, didn't ring a bell. And but then she described herself, where she was living, etc. And I thought, yeah, it does ring a bell. And I remember the sister as well. And she relocated from one side of London to the other side of London for her own protection when she converted.
It's even tougher for females.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I asked her, well, since we're related, how about we meet up? And then she said, no. I'm like, hey? And I was like, why not? And she goes, because you come from that community. And I said, that community I left more than 20 years ago. But that's how frightened, the ex-Hindus are, that word can get back to their own families, etc., of, us meeting up even, or what's happened with the latest news, because they did, if in some ways, because they escaped for their own safety.
And I remember that you told me that your mother, before her death, had converted to Christianity.
That's correct.
But that wasn't a big deal. And I remember even earlier, you told me that Hindus are okay with Jews, are okay with Christians, are okay probably with other religions, but not with Muslims. What is it between Hinduism and Islam? What is it that makes it so hostile?
To be honest, I was even raised to be anti-Muslim, I would say. Even having the odd Muslim friend at my primary school was considered to be a no-no. And I remember my parents telling me, stay away from the Muslims. Because when I look at it, it all goes back to partition. It does. What happened to the generation beforehand.
So it's political.
It's political, you could say. That's absolutely.
When India was split into two.
Pakistan and India. That's what it seems to go back to. They have this, misconceived idea as well, where, when the Muslims were ruling India, they forcibly converted, large numbers of Hindus to become Muslims.
Although it goes against Islam. You cannot force anybody to embrace
Absolutely.
Islam.
But they do carry these unfortunate stereotypes, if you like, negative stereotypes of how people come to Islam, how you have to interact with them, etc. And it's quite appalling when you think about it. But in my experience, from what I've seen within the Hindu community, a lot of people may nowadays speaking about what's the situation in India and what the Muslims are facing there by their nationalistic government, or RSS, or what I would classify as far-right extremism.
Yes.
And I have attended events here that speak about far-right extremism. And I say to the panel, why haven't you spoken about what I call brown extremism, Hindu extremism? I go, we all keep hearing about, white extremism, Islamic extremism, but when are you going to address the issue of Hindu extremism? It doesn't happen. This is not the talk of the town, even though I know it happens. I'll give you a case as well, where there was a ex-Hindu who converted to Islam, and then she was actually killed by her former husband, who's a Hindu, by a crossbow.
This was here in the UK?
UK, London. Not too many years ago, probably around about 3 or 4 years ago. But what happened was that the killing took place at the time of a Hindu festival, but that never made it to the media. And I'm reading obviously the press reports, etc. And I remember I did make contact with Evening Standard, like a London free newspaper. And I said, why have you not mentioned the fact that it's taking place at a Hindu religious festival time? The response I got, well, I kind of knew what the response was going to be, but they didn't want to make mention of it. I said, well, that could be a contributing factor to it. And they were saying, oh, because it's now down to the courts, we can't report it like that. I'm saying, well, no, you could if you really wanted to.
But it was known that he killed her because she was a Muslim.
Yes, she was a Muslim who had been previously married to him. And, you know, he had a top job in the NHS as well. And, but due to that conversion taking place and that killing taking place at a Hindu religious time, if that had been a Muslim who had done it, the Muslim's faith, and if it was a religious holiday, would have been brought into that reporting as well. But in this case, it wasn't mentioned, which I find extremely odd. And, you know, myself, I have raised the issue of Muslim converts as a community to the Metropolitan Police as well. And I went to a public meeting. Are
you still with the police?
No. This was many years ago, you could say, in terms of, but what happened though, it was like a key community advisor to the police, where I would be advising them with regards to the convert Muslim community. They did say to me, I asked them at this public meeting 3 questions. Number 1, do you have any Muslim converts in your department? Which was at that time the Muslim Contact Unit. And I also asked them, are your officers who deal in domestic violence and
hate crime? Is that when Bob Lambert was working there?
No, I think it was after that.
After
that time he had left, yeah. But I asked them, the second question was, do you liaise with any Muslim convert organizations? Third one was, are your officers who are specialists in hate crime as well as domestic violence, are they trained in convert domestic violence? And all 3 answers were no. This was an inspector. He put his hands up and he said, look, no. We did meet up afterwards and he said to me, Abdulmaalik, I've got to be honest. I go, what's up? You know, he goes, you're the first person to mention to us about the Muslim
Although the phenomenon exists, that violence does exist.
I mean, what gets done to the Muslim converts very rarely makes it to the media. However, if somebody decides to leave Islam or something else or whatever, then mass publicity for some reason. And I'm starting to explain to people, you know, what happens to converts, the many converts that I'm a mentor to converts as well. And that's nationwide. There's not many ex-Hindus who can actually help other ex-Hindus as well. And sometimes they message me at all sorts of hours, nighttime before Fajr, for example, as well. And I'm still responding by WhatsApp or by the phone call because they know that I can be their point of contact. And people need to realize that converts in general can possibly face high levels of isolation.
Sure.
Isolation is a vulnerability.
Now, does that apply to the mainstream Muslim community as well? They don't pay, from your point of view, they don't pay enough attention to the converts?
I think in terms of the mainstream Muslim community, it's like this inspector said to me, they've been having meetings with all these community leaders for 20 years, but no one ever mentioned about the Muslim convert community.
It's not an issue.
It's not an issue for them at that time. However, for the Muslim community in general, people love to invite us to Islam, and at the Shahada time, you know, other people say, oh, you have Biryani now, you're dressed in a particular way, and blah, 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 and you get your gifts, etc. But then what happens afterwards?
They forget about you.
Absolutely. And that's where the challenge lies. And I say to people that you need to have something in place as that support network, etc.
I think some of the English converts I spoke to, they do have something going on.
Yeah.
It's
a lot more better now than what it was 20, 30
true,
years ago.
of course. It's improved.
But I still think there needs to be more support for ex-Hindus and ex-Sikhs, I've got to be honest. And some people are now setting up like a separate groups to help them.
Could it be the sensitivity of community relations that make it a bit difficult?
That's a good suggestion. I would say it is. I know of counsellors who went to speak to ex-Hindus and ex-Sikhs who converted to Islam, that when they came out of the counselling, they needed to get counselling themselves, because they said, we'd never heard such stories like this before, that it affected them.
Now, I remember in the first part, you told me something interesting in the beginning. You said you grew to be a practicing Hindu. Now, what does that mean, to be a practicing Hindu? And when you convert to Islam, does that mean it's tougher or easier once you've converted?
To be a practicing Hindu, for me at that time, meant that you had to be a devotee of such a Sai Baba, this man god. And
It's called Satya
Sai Baba.
Sai Baba.
Yep. And he basically was a reincarnation of another Sai Baba who was called Shirdi Sai Baba. And he's also said that there's going to be another Sai Baba who's going to be coming afterwards called Prema Sai Baba.
Wow.
And it's only from India, by the way, these people are from. But for me, it meant, abstaining from meat. You had classes which you attend called human value classes. And you had, in some ways, structure in terms of what you could do and what you couldn't do. And you obviously had to do your worship in the morning, in the evening as well. We did make offerings also for dinner to the idols as well. And also we also give a glass of water as well. So that was something else. As I said, I was a vegetarian as well, in between a vegetarian and vegan. So sometimes you can choose between the two. Sometimes you wouldn't wear leather, for example. That's as far as some people will take it. But anyone could really join. It was seen to some people as a movement as well. And
Yeah, we see some
spiritualism.
some Europeans go
Yes.
and become Hindu.
I mean, I met Europeans over there as well. It's like the founder of Hard Rock Cafe. He was a devotee of Sai Baba as well. And that's something I found out afterwards. And even Peter Saunders.
What attracts them to it? Is there a philosophy there that attracts them, or is it just the spiritualism?
I think it's to do with the spiritualism. People say, you don't have, if I could compare it to Islam, you don't have many rules and regulations that are in place with
It's
Islam.
easy, yeah, no
It's much more
restrictions.
easier. And in some ways, you could potentially make your own rules up as well. But obviously, I find that to be quite different from Islam. You've got your limits, as I say, your rules and regulations, which are there for a particular purpose. It's like if you drive a car breaks down, what are you going to do? You either take it to the mechanic who knows about it, has knowledge about it, or you have the manual. And that, in some ways, it's like the way I see Islam. If you don't know something gets stuck, you go to somebody who's knowledgeable, who can offer that service to you, or you go back to the Quran to actually see, what you can actually do.
Is Hinduism a way of life the way Islam is, in the sense that there is a list of prohibitions you have to avoid, there are a list of obligations you have to undertake?
It's supposed to be, but to be honest, there are rules and regulations in Hinduism. And at that time, I remember, even amongst my cousins, they were claiming to be a similar faith as well and level, but then they'll be eating beef burgers as well. And I'm like thinking, well, Hindus are not supposed to even be eating meat, man. Are you going to beef is on top of that, in terms of like the McDonald's beef burger. I'm saying, how's that possible? And I did find there was a lot of people who were perhaps claiming to be Hindu, but they didn't really know the foundation of Hinduism. You have the concept of the Trimurti, like something similar to the Trinity. Some people do it, and people would actually perhaps casually proclaim to be Hindu and celebrate Hindu festival. But I do know, for example, like the caste I used to belong to, my surname is Tailor, and Tailor is spelled Tailor, as in the one who sews, the profession. And what's supposed to happen when you get married, you're supposed to marry from within that caste, although very few people amongst the Hindu community who are part of that now go according to that. And what you find is that we do have we had our own celebrations like Diwali, etc.
How do you know that you belong to this caste or that caste?
We're born into it. We're born into it.
So your parents tell you?
Yes, you're born into it. You have that surname, you attach it, and then you know what particular caste you could actually come from. But what happens is that you know, my relatives to this day, I've seen from their Facebook pages, they would openly celebrate Christmas. You know, have the Christmas party in the hall, etc., with alcohol, the music, and blah blah, etc. And you know, and I wondered to myself, hold on a minute, what's happened here then? Fine, we're in the country which is predominantly Christianity, but you seem to have adopted now Christian practices, and you're mixing it with your way of life, you could say, in terms of Hinduism.
I remember when I was in Japan, you know, the most, they have Buddhism there, and they have the Shinto, which is the more widespread, the more dominant faith. And someone told me that you are born into Shintoism. When you get married in a church, and when you die, you are treated like a Buddhist. They don't seem to find the contradiction there. Only when someone converts to Islam that they are taken aback, oh, this is something completely alien, this is something completely different.
I think with Islam, we have like a unique way of life. I wouldn't say it separates us from our larger community of where we live, like the non-Muslim community. I just say that, you know, we perhaps look different, but then again, you know, like how I'm dressed now. You know, we've got beards. You can find an English person with beards. You know, if we change our names to an English name, what would be the difference to certain people in terms of outwardly? It would just, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So that sometimes when I register in places, I say Mr. Tailor. And people expect, when I turn up, people are, you know, expecting to see a white English face. And then they go, oh, who are you? And they're shocked as well. So I'm Tailor, but the other way, I'm
But you are Tailor.
The whole thing.
Tailor in your name is a Hindu name, isn't it?
It's a Hindu name, yes.
But it just coincidentally happens to be an English word.
Well, the story is apparently the original name was called Darji, which literally translates from Gujarati to English to mean tailor. And when the ancestors left, like India, during the days of the British Raj, whether they went to East Africa or Fiji, they thought to translate the last name to the English equivalent to make it easier for immigration purposes.
I see. So it's the translation of the original Hindu name.
Yes.
Now, how is your relationship with your family? Any relations, or completely cut off?
It is still cut off, unfortunately. My mother passed away. She was in some ways my last point of contact with the family. Although I do have some relatives in Leicester, another city in north of England. And but we very rarely speak, you could say. If I saw somebody's died, I would always go and pay my respects to the family house, and that's when I would see other people there. And but even with my siblings, it's my older sister. I never really got on with her when I became Muslim. She kind of like blames me for what my aunt actually said. She actually blames me because she never got married, and she had like this is the whole thing. When my father was alive, many years ago, she had a boyfriend and they were dating, came from the same caste, if you like, and they wanted to get married. And so the father of the boy's side basically phoned up to speak to my father. My father said no, apparently she's still young, so that's why it wouldn't be still a good idea. But apparently the real reason was that I became Muslim and I brought like shame to the family, so other people would actually find out about me. And that's why he actually apparently said no to the marriage, so I wouldn't be revealed to everyone. So she's had a bit of a...
so now she's putting the blame on you?
Yes, although she's never said it, but that's what my aunt did say to me. She has, I think, got married. I don't know though, because prior to COVID, she had gone to India with my mother to do the shopping, if you like, for the wedding shopping. And that was something I didn't even know that took place. And then I found out that she was actually engaged to somebody. I was like, oh, okay. And but now with COVID near enough finished, I think they may have got married. I was not invited. I had no knowledge about the event.
What is your community now? I mean, you are no longer part of your original family.
My community, I would say, is perhaps predominantly the Muslim community, who can come from different backgrounds as well. And there is a subsection, I would say, that's also the convert community, with some converts still like me to help them out as well, especially ex-Hindus as well. So I get referrals nationwide about
Mostly English?
No, I wouldn't say mostly English. I would always say it's you get a black community of converts, Asian community of converts as well, and there's also born Muslims, as we say.
Yes.
But you know, people, they know me. In the mosque I attend, it's a multicultural masjid.
So you're quite involved with the community.
Yeah, I mean, my work is that I'm a tour guide who specialises in Muslim heritage within Britain. So the vast majority of my bookings are for Muslims. So I get to see the Muslim community whilst I work as well. So that's another way.
Well, Brother Abdulmaalik, it's been really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for giving us the time.
Once again, thank you for having me.